Hello everyone, Lieutenant Colonel Henrichs from DSFM here to give you a quick introduction on F102. So 3 main things I want you to take away from this introduction. The first is the role of concepts as the nuts and bolts of describing our near-term future, guiding modernization priorities, and guiding us to developing required capabilities. The second is how we use those concepts inside of what's called a capabilities-based assessment, which is the first step of JSIDs, to compare the requirements for the future, the current capabilities, find the gaps between the two, and then determine some possible solutions across the .mil.pf domains that we talked a little bit about in F101. And then thirdly, we're going to talk real quick on how we document those recommended solutions. So first of all, we talked a little bit in F101 about vision and strategy, right? The Army vision as section 1 of the Army plan is a long-term vision of end state, normally discussing 15 to 20 years out. The national security strategy, national defense strategy, national military strategy are written generally on the same time horizon to talk about end states. Doctrine, we're all familiar with. It is the description of how the military fights with the current force structure, current material that's fielded. Bridging the gap between those two are concepts. So concepts are trying to provide a detailed description of the near-term future. Provide a construct of what future military operations likely looks like and the required capabilities to conduct. Generally thought of as a 5 to 15 year future. And those are what's going to drive us to really figuring out what our current modernization priorities look like. This here is the Army's concept framework. If you got a chance to look at any of the URLs or libraries I sent you by email after our F101 class, I sent you links to where pretty much all of these frameworks, all these concepts exist, all the unclassified ones anyway. And if you look through them, you'll see that they're a relatively complete description of what we expect the next 5 to 15 years to look like. Our current capstone concept is the multi-domain operations in 2028, so it's relatively short term right now. This stuff evolves, right? As we expect to get a new FM3 officially published next year sometime, which moves our doctrine into multi-domain operations, the concept will likely also stretch out and probably get us to the 2035 endpoint, which we can talk more about in class. Across the top is also worth noting, just to kind of describe and hopefully picture how these concepts evolve over time, right? How experiments, war games, studies go into further developing, refining, trying to narrow that cone of uncertainty that goes off into the future so that we are properly targeting modernization priorities. So we take those concepts for the future, along with the near-term requirements, the current requirements of combatant commanders, right? We talked in F101 about the balance between readiness and modernization. But we take those requirements on the department and go through this process called the capabilities-based assessment. It's a 3-step process. The first, the needs analysis, is basically just determining all the things we're told to do, either today, tomorrow, right, by combatant commanders, by national strategy or policy, etc. Once we've determined what we need to be able to do, we go into gaps analysis, which is nothing more than taking that list of stuff that you're required to do, those requirements, matching it against current capabilities, and finding the difference. If there are things we're required to do that we can't currently do, that's a capability gap. And those gaps get prioritized, for how we're going to work on them, which takes us into the third step of solutions analysis. All we're doing there is basically brainstorming across the .mil PFP domains on how we could solve and close those prioritized gaps. The output should be a documented recommendation for gap solution, right? To work out a capability gap. There's two primary documents that come out of this. The first is the DCR. It's a .mil PFP change recommendation. It's often referred to as a non-material change. As you can see some of the examples, and we talked about in F101, it's rare that we're talking about a single change or a change in a single domain. Normally it's a combination of things that have to go together to close a gap, right? You'll notice that material is included there. It's often also called a little m solution. That's why it's lowercase, because we're not talking about a new start material. We're talking about buying more of something we already have. We're talking about buying some commercial off-the-shelf kit that exists that we can employ for a short-term solution, that kind of stuff. The other document that can come out of here for a new material start is called an ICD, an Initial Capabilities Document, and that describes a material capability that we are pursuing building, right? Researching, experimenting, testing, designing, all that stuff to get us to fielding. These are things that are unique to military service, right? That are not found, not developed already. And that is going to be the focus of what we talk about in F103 when we really talk the defense acquisition system. So in order to keep this short, that's where we're at for now. Please bring all your questions to class and let's discuss this more.